All right. Culture Club half hour. Echoplex edition. Jeff is hardware free. And so we're gonna, enter into the DJ mixer of Daft Punk with some filters and some effects.
It's always a fun exploration in that space, but no.
Exactly. Did you, speaking of Daft Punk, you see any special music or any special fun stuff during the Basel Miami Art Week celebrations last week?
I honestly want to say, before I get into it, I want to say something about it. Both of us have been to plenty of Basels in our lifetime, and I had a fantastic week. I thought I had a fantastic week between art and music and old friends.
I'm glad you thought so. I'm not sure what everybody else thought about your week, but I'm glad you thought it was great. But
it's interesting because we've done these events enough, and we sort of understand what we're getting into. And I think if you do it right, you pick events or activations that work for you. If you get it wrong, it kind of sucks. And I feel like maybe I just picked the right activations. There was a lot going on.
That is true. I mean, given the way that Miami and like the beach in particular locks down with gridlocks down with traffic. You gotta plan wisely and pick wisely. So what did you see that was interesting, or what did you take part in?
So first and foremost, Breakfast Club went down at Scope Miami, which is probably one of the 4 big art shows. Chase Sapphire is one of the big sponsors there, though we were not there necessarily with Chase.
Shout out to our friend Stan Lumax.
Yeah, it was great. We got together. It was awesome to see all the regulars in town. And Scope was just a great fair in general. But I would say the surprise non-art music event that I saw was Fatboy Slim at the Faena event. Fatboy Slim at the Faena. And here's why.
Tell us what Norman Cook was up to, Jeff.
Norman Cook was crushing a room that was half full, and he just didn't give a shit. And I think that was the most, for me, the best part of it. He was there for, I think Chase actually sponsored that event. So he was there for, a card member event, and it was late. I think I got into the space with my friend Renee probably around maybe 1:30, and he was still going out. Shout out Rose as well from Factory, who a dear friend who spent the better part of the time with us that night too. But that was great. I thought the events on the beach were great. You're absolutely right. Traffic's a disaster, but this is something that I think the city's gonna have to try to tackle. There's more than ever water taxis bringing you from what's known as the outer coastal, which is essentially where Miami Beach is,
right?
Back to the mainland or the intercoastal. I'm trying to think of other events that went well. Nada, the show itself, was getting a lot of praise, a lot of review.
New Art Dealers Alliance.
What do you know about them, Ben?
I actually was on the sort of volunteer advisor committee for a while. I mean, it's probably 10 to 15 years old. Galleries that are getting started in the business that are of a particular size or a particular volume are invited to take part, and then NADA as a body puts on a show that lots of interesting galleries have taken part in and graduated from. In the sort of the realms of the Halsey McKay, my friend Ryan's gallery out in East Hampton, or 56 Henry in the Lower East Side. But really cool organization and where the sort of burgeoning talent tends to come from, which is cool.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see the shows, and it felt actually really good to walk the show. Some of them were lighter than others, maybe. Yeah. But I think in general, there was a lot to see. I don't know what a clear standout was, though, to be honest, Ben.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because you've been vociferous in praise of the whole week, and it all came together for you. I was listening to How Long Gone this morning, and it sounds like those guys had heard that their party was the best, most interesting thing. I mean, people would tell you that, of course, if it's your party.
But again?
How Long Gone did a thing at Silencio on Wednesday night.
That was actually a fantastic party on Wednesday night. I give it to those guys.
Okay, so there you go. So there was that, but the feedback I heard was that it was maybe a little quieter than last year, or that it was not as interesting. The trade feedback from the fair, as viewed through the lens of the art newspaper and through Wall Power, which is Marion Maneker's newsletter, was that sales were solid to good, and that people were breathing a sigh of relief, was I think the quote I read this morning. So,
sorry, what's the name of her newsletter again?
Marion's actually a man. He
apologies.
I don't know him. Actually, I don't know what Marion's gender is, to be totally honest. I just assumed it was a man. It's called Wall Power. It's one of the Puck newsletters. But it has a really, I really like his coverage of the market because it's through a gimlet eye, shall we say.
Yes.
In any case, there's that, but there's the art newspaper. There's Hyperallergic. Those are, great sources for that kind of coverage.
Yeah.
And anyway, it sounded like it was solid, not outstanding. Your week was outstanding.
We heard a lot of pre-buying, a lot of
sure,
pre-show purchasing happened, and I guess that is quite the norm. It's interesting now that I think about it, and I did go to a fair amount of events. I would say that the beach had its usual scene, but the majority of where I would say the body of traffic was definitely on the mainland. So there was
interesting.
For me, it was very full. Outside of art, to me, it felt, dare I say, as strong as maybe a winter music conference for just pure music. It was so strong. And I would say this because, there's a lot of new spaces that have been here. Factory Town can really put a lot of dancers and fans in the middle of Wynwood. And I think that's very special to Miami. Maybe not something that I guess the Avant-Garde group is certainly doing that in Brooklyn and certainly deep parts of Queens, I believe. But for Miami, that's one of like 3 venues that are that large within town. And it's really interesting to watch that stuff pop off, which was cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that I saw was good. From the school perspective, of course, we did a lot of programming. I thought the bigger brand activations were really interesting. Cartier has a really interesting experience that I think is called 100, if I'm not mistaken.
Where was that?
That's here in the design district near their shop. There's showings of a film, and it looks like there's been lineups outside for essentially every day since they started showing the film last week.
Oh, interesting.
Jaguar showed, of course, their new concept, not a concept car, which looked... Did
you go and see it?
I did, of course. I went and saw it. What's interesting, Ben, is that it's an all-EV vehicle that can get 1,000 horsepower, which is quite big. But I have to say, Ben, it's a big car. Like, it's not an easy car to park, and certainly not in downtown New York. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, it's as interesting as the vehicle is, and it feels like the branding touches that very well, regardless of of how the audience looks at it. And then the other thing I'll say, and I apologize, I don't remember who actually spoke, if it was the CEO or the chief officer from the Jaguar brand, but he was pretty blunt in saying, look, we've caused a lot of controversy. That's always been our thing, and none of us that going to stop us. And you can really see just like a pure design language change happening, and starting with this massive concept vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, look, concept vehicle, fine. Logo change, fine. To me, it's all of the rest of the storytelling around it that felt like try hard and superfluous.
Let's talk about that. What did you see from your side?
Well, so that whole thing was launched with a 30-second spot that used a bunch of advertising platitudes to explain what Jaguar was going to do going forward, like, never copy or whatever. Just like
copy.
It was like, yeah, exactly. It's like, junior advertising school copy over.
It felt soft.
Fashion. It didn't even feel soft. It just felt inane. And like, what are we doing here? And the fact that it didn't tie back to the brand in any particular way, the brand's heritage in any particular way, the fact that it didn't tie back to the product in any particular way, like the car.
Then let's talk about what is the brand's heritage really? What is the Jaguar heritage? We all know that it's a renowned name, but even today, doesn't it not feel a little stodgy?
I mean, look, we are of an age where I think you could go either way on it, but first and foremost, it's British motoring, British luxury,
For sure.
British motorsport. It's the classic, refined elegance of Rule Britannia packaged into a vehicle that looks like nothing else on the road, and that has an insignia that is as indelible as any in the history of branding, period, given that legacy has been, I think, mismanaged, but to just depart from it entirely seems crazy to me. And then beyond that, to depart for it in a way that feels like a sort of Gen Z reinvention circa 2018, and I say that because I was there for a Gen Z reinvention in 2018. That A, it just feels bound to fail, and B, it feels like just like of a moment that never existed, much less doesn't exist now.
Right. Let's talk about a few other examples. Like we can look at. I think Burberry Riccardo Tisci, to be honest, if I look at an equivalent in the fashion world, and again, like, I'm not judging anyone's success here. I'm simply saying when you look at a brand change, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like Tisci with Burberry, at the very least, it's a fashion brand. So if you do fashion things with it, awesome. Like, Jaguar's not a fashion brand; it's a car brand. And so the thing that happened with it just doesn't make any sense. Look, every brand is trying to be a culture brand now, and it's funny. Like, JWA, Jonathan Anderson, was interviewed in the Financial Times over the weekend, talking about doing the costume design for Queer, the new Luca. I'm gonna mess up his name, but the film from the director of Challengers and others, Luca Guadagnino, something to that effect. Anyway, in it, he said, when I took over Loewe in 2012 or 14 or whenever it was, I wanted to go from being a luxury brand to being a culture brand. He's made that move. He made that move presciently. He made that move successfully. And Loewe, I think, is now thought of in that vein. Every brand wants to do that. I understand why, because everybody looks at Loewe and looks at Supreme, and everybody looks at Mischief, and everybody looks at all of these others that have become culture brands. The problem is that it's just like,
I think everyone chases those brands.
Oh no, but that's my whole thing. It's like they chase the brand, assuming like we can do that without understanding the foundation without regarding the foundation that they're standing upon. And
sure,
you take a far step too far to the corner of any foundation, and the thing will tip. I
feel like Jaguar had nothing to lose in this case, where in my mind they were not in the conversation anyways. I'm sorry.
I mean, see, it's funny you should say that, because it's like I love that brand. I love those cars. I'd love to own one at some point. To me, it's a little bit like the way Wokistan felt about Tesla, and maybe still does. Like, I don't think I want to get anywhere near it now, because it's to make a decision post rebrand is like, what are you doing?
I mean, it just shows that you stick to your guns when it comes to creative expression, Ben, and that's what's important. What looks good is important.
I mean, well, the thing that bums me out about it, right, is that, and Scott Galloway said this last week, that brand is differentiation, right? What brand provides is differentiation, and what I like about Jaguar historically is that it is different, and that's what attracts me to it, and that's why I was got it. This move signals to me a move like a pivot to a middle that A, is boring, and B, worse, doesn't exist. And so I'm just like, I find it befuddling.
It is befuddling because there's only a few brands that can actually build an audience that doesn't exist around a product that's new to market. And maybe Jaguar isn't necessarily that one.
But I want to ask you another question. It ignores their strengths. Anyway, go ahead. We can stop talking about this.
With all of the podcasts that Prof G does, which one do you listen to?
Oh my God, I listened to all of them, and I was just complaining. I was talking I was talking to Troy Young, the former CEO at Hearst, the other day, because he does a podcast with with Brian Morrissey called People versus Algorithms, which I really enjoy. I was listening to it, and while I was listening to it, I sent Troy a note or a text, and he called me sort of out of the blue, which was cool. But anyway, I was talking to him about it. And I was just, the thing about Scott that kills me is that he's now making so many podcasts that he repeats his stories all the time, and I'm just it gets
that gets
really
old
aggravating.
quick.
Yeah, note for us, Jeff, when we're doing Culture Club half hour 6 times a week, we got to make sure we don't repeat ourselves.
I know. I mean, that's when he gets stale. He's also living his best life traveling.
Oh
Europe.
yeah, no, and fair fucks. I mean, I love that stuff, and I think his perspective on things is valuable. But it's I can only hear the story about his stockbroker when he was a teenager
Nice.
so many times before
onto
my eyes glaze over.
bigger and better things, Ben.
There's
you
nothing
were
bigger
able
than
to
Scott
experience.
Galloway. He's the biggest. No, never mind.
You were able to experience Luna this week. I was there just around.
Oh yeah, I got married.
What'd you think?
I mean, I love my wife very much. Hopefully, we're gonna stay together. We've been together.
Married. That's right. I'm sorry. Congratulations, Ben, on the second matrimony.
It was his third. It's the third one, but who's counting?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
For those not familiar, of course, Luna was a project put together by. Oh my God, I'm going to kill his name. What's the artist's name? Is it Geller? Am I mistaken?
Austin. Yeah. See, Jeff, this is why you got to come to the show with notes.
I think it may have been. This is where live doesn't work for us, Ben. We're just
not like we were going to edit this anyway. The Andre Heller is his name. Andre Heller, who was not an artist actually. I guess according to AI overview, he claims to be an artist. But he was an Austrian, certainly aficionado of art, if not an artist himself. And
that's right.
He had loved amusement parks as a child in Austria, and he wanted to do one that was informed by art. So he came over to New York and tracked down Andy Warhol and got Warhol's participation, and went through that. Then got a bunch of other people, Kenny Scharf and Basquiat and Lichtenstein, a whole series of others. And so they did this art carnival thing, which lived for a couple of years in Austria and then got shut down and shuttered and put into storage, only to be rescued a couple of years later by a consortium of people, including Drake, which was, it seems to be Drake's largest cultural contribution recently, outside of
saving Luna. True.
Outside of Stake.com ads, but yeah.
Well, by the way,
it was a really fun experience, and it's cool to see all of that stuff. You can't ride the rides, of course, but you can go in the Liechtenstein Funhouse mirror thing, and then I'm trying to think who the other one. Oh, and then Dali made a geodesic dome.
That's right.
That is covered in mirrored surfaces, and which is really cool unto itself. And then they've now apparently added neon lights to the bottom of it, so it changes colors and it has kind of like an LED vibe to it. It's really cool.
They've kept it pretty original. I think one of the more difficult aspects of putting Luna back together was the actual size, I think, of the Basquiat Ferris wheel, which I think is over 35 feet tall. So they haven't found many venues to be able to show it and express it. And honestly, I had a great time. I went with my kids, and we had a fantastic time. One of the things that actually drew me to it as well, in reading the material before entering, was that they also, within those containers where they rediscovered the carnival itself,
the artwork,
prints and lithographs from that time. And if you went into the gift store, they were selling an original Liechtenstein. They had, not originals, they were lithographs made for the event. And they had a Keith Haring that I thought was just fantastic. And
oh, really?
I want to get your take on this. I bought, and they were not cheap. They are original from the time, and for all I know, I probably overpaid for it. But I felt like $900 for an original Haring lithograph felt like a good price.
Yeah, I would say so.
Others have told me that you could have got a signed Haring lithograph for maybe $1,800 or $2,000.
Right.
But I may
But it wasn't signed. It was just like
they're not signed. Yeah, we should be clear on that.
Got it.
They are not signed, but they are genuine in touch. You know what I mean? You can clearly see age on these. And by the way, why would Luna lie to me about that? If they did, it would suck.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
but it felt like they had low volume on those kind of pieces, which I thought was interesting. So, and on top of that, they were also selling shirts. from the
Yeah,
spirit.
I was going to say we were running late. Marcella and I were running late to a dinner, and so we didn't stop in the gift shop and look around at all. So I'm sort of bummed about that. I may try to go back and
Yeah,
sneak back in the side door or something.
I thought the herring poster was one of the better ones. There was a Liechtenstein poster as well, which was way more affordable, quite frankly. I think it was in the maybe $600 range for it. But they were essentially discovered within the containers, and they've gone through and put them together. I just found it really cool to have an opportunity.
Yeah,
to
that's great. Well, I mean, look, anything you get dead stock like that is fun to discover and to look at.
It is amazing. Ben, how's the rest of your week for you? We're in the middle of full holiday season here. It's been cold in New York. I can see you holding that hoodie tight.
Yeah, it isn't that cold, but we do have
Look at that. We are
Christmas
in
tree.
the Christmas spirit.
We are in the Christmas spirit. No, it's good. I mean, we're hosting a holiday party on Saturday, which I'm excited about, and going to a couple of other ones. My wife's got all of her office festivities this week. I, of course, don't have an office, so I don't have to do any festivities, which is nice. So I'll just hang out with the dogs. But yeah, I mean, like, it's going to be warm this week, relatively speaking, although I think it's going to rain a bunch. So I don't know how much culture we're going to be out getting. But looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, man. And so what else has been going on in Miami? You see anybody interesting? You see anybody? Oh, just by the way, I wanted to ask, did you see the Rob Pruitt Rome gas station on Lincoln Boulevard?
Only in photo, because I didn't get a chance to go over to that area, and I'm assuming it's still there. Yes.
I don't know. So Rob Pruitt, the artist who's well known for his glitter paintings and references to cocaine. I think his breakout piece was like a 35-foot line of cocaine in a gallery that people were invited to, interact with. But in any case, he did with support from the Italian shoe brand, or the American origin, now Italian managed shoe brand Autry. They chromed out a gas station and had an event for it on Wednesday night that I know our buddy Chris Corrado was in town for. So I wondered whether you had gotten over to see that.
No, I didn't get it. I did my best to actually stay on the beach, even though most things were going on the mainland. I did not, but I will today, now that essentially the week is over. The thing that I did see on the beach was an exhibition done by an artist named Nicholas Galadin, and it was 100. I think it was called The Great Migration, and it was 100 life-size elephants. I think the most of them were made of from an invasive.
They're right. They're made of. Aren't they made of
invasive weed?
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was going to say, I thought that maybe they were made of bamboo. They installed those, were in New York in the meatpacking district for a period recently, or some other. I actually can't say for sure what the artist is, but
I think it was meatpacking. You're right.
Yeah. Some installation similar to that, and I believe that they were made from either wicker or bamboo.
Yeah, they were. From what I just read quickly, they were made from some indigenous weed, which, I mean, it's amazing.
Indigenous to where?
Well, let me check that out.
To South Florida, or indigenous to where elephants come from?
Indigenous to India, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Indian element. Yeah. That makes sense.
But it's great. I mean, like, I think I'm obsessed with how we reuse things. One item I did get from a group out of Bali called Space Available, and they're a little creative agency that I think are doing some interesting stuff. Hi Snob Adam here at their Not in Miami event in downtown. And they did this. This is a kind music peace sign, of course, and it's made from like a marbled plastic, a marbled recycled plastic of some sort. What I think is very cool is that they actually also sell a recycled or upcycled sofa that's made from bottles, of course. We see that a lot. They're not certainly the first to do this. I mean, Nike did it with some shirts years ago during World Cup.
Yeah.
But they've actually made a full-size sofa that's built on a bamboo frame that's covered in a material, a textile that's made from plastics. And what I thought was really cool is it takes about 10,000 bottles to make this, but how cool would it be?
10,000 bottles to make that thing?
Oh, no, sorry, for the couch.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
For the couch.
I was like, wow, that's some real hyper concentration there.
It's in the thousands, of course, but imagine what it would look like to get schools around the world to just collect bottles and trade them in for objects that they need. And I think that to me was something that was interesting to see. And it's not necessarily tied to art as much as how we tie it to how we can reuse materials in ways to, I don't know, make new things.
Yeah, for sure.
We've seen these full size or room size 3D printers that can now output, furniture size objects. To me, that becomes really interesting, right? I'm kind of obsessed with this. We talked about the banana that sold last week, of course, at Sotheby's for, what was it? Six?
I gotta say, it's with fees, it was $6.2 million. The one thing, by the way, I have to tell you this. I went up to Sotheby's recently to pick something up that I won at auction, and I discovered that Sotheby's has a wine shop in their building that gets like all kinds of cool allocations from the special chateaus and the special producers in France. Yeah, because they're not retailing, or they are not generally retailing collections that they get from people who are auctioning their collections, but they sometimes do, right? Like, let's say you want to auction your cellar and you've got however many cases, and some of the cases are desirable and some of the ones aren't. Like the ones that aren't desirable at auction, they'll sell through the store, right? So there's a chance to get some special stuff that way. And then because of that, they then have relationships with all of these interesting producers, and they just retail stuff. And it's like, they've got, what caught my eye when I was there was like, there's this rack of, Bordeaux under $20. And I'm like,
no shit.
That's cool. Yeah. So anyway, and plus, I didn't buy any wine that time. I was just there to pick something up. But I'm going to go back. They do tasting nights every Thursday, apparently. So I'm going to go back and do a tasting and, get into it. But I just love that idea. It's like, what do you give friends, family, colleagues, etc.? Bottle of wine in a Sotheby's bag? It's a pretty cool vibe, right? Especially if you're paying, $20 for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. On a completely different note, from the other side of Sotheby's, Fort Lauderdale hosted ThriftCon this weekend. It was 2 days of
interesting
143 different thrifters. Now, Ben, you and I are, of course,
okay, so hold on a second. What is a thrifter in that definition?
Okay,
that's talk about that.
I'm glad you asked, because I think when I think of a thrifter, it's somebody like me who goes by a flea market or maybe a Goodwill and finds, I don't know, Stone Island, which I have. I found Tom Brown at the Goodwill. I know that sounds insane, but
saw that piece.
I promise you it's true. And I guess somebody that thrifts is somebody that spends all their time looking, but very specifically for ThriftCon, it's a whole area that is so big and has been, I think, undercovered in the same way that wrestling t-shirts were, but it's people that collect, what I would call the 90s era black t-shirts, oversized. So, an original Jay-Z t-shirt from the Blueprint could sell for, $150 to $400 depending on the quality. So to me, the show was very much a vintage t-shirt. People that were into vintage t-shirts, this was the show.
But I guess the essence of my question was, this is vintage dealers, or this is like a store like
it's vintage dealers,
right? Okay,
but less so maybe the way that we look at vintage. This is sort of like new school vintage dealers that are in the world of the round twos, as an example. They're moving sneakers, they're moving streetwear, they're moving vintage hip hop. But the thing that I thought was super cool was that you had 143 dealers, but people were also showing up with their own shirts to trade. And it was just an incredible scene in that sense to see people trading. I, for instance, ended up picking up a pair of, and I think it's called, they are called Gramici, an original OG, like US made Gramicis from like the 80s for, quite frankly, not that bad, and it was all there. I saw an original,
for quite frankly, not that bad.
Probably an original Operation Ivy t-shirt. I don't know if cool. There was a band called Mr. T Experience that was on lookout at that same time.
Yeah,
but those just random, you saw stuff and you're like, all right, like the kids are still into it.
Did you get your Screeching Weasel t-shirt too?
Funny you say Screeching Weasel. I did not see it, but I can see the record cover right now.
By the way, I just want to say, because it's saying, did you get your Screeching Weasel t-shirt? Reminds me of the lyric from Bitch and Camaro. Did you get your Motley Crue t-shirt? All proceeds go to get the lead singer out of jail.
Did I just see that Wheatus was on Tiny Desk concert?
My God, really? I would love. I mean, geez, a Wheatus comeback 20 years later, 30 years later, 30 years later, would be pretty. That would be strong. That would be strong.
Ben, go into that closet before Christmas and see what kind of vintage you can gift your boy before he returns.
Oh, dude, believe me. He's after. It's funny. He asked for a pair of Timberland wheat boots for his birthday, and he didn't get them. And I said to him, Campbell, I have my pair of Timberland wheat boots that I bought the year I graduated from high school, 1994. I graduated in 93, I guess. I bought them in 93. So if you want some 31-year-old Timbs, they're upstate in a box. And so we're going to go searching through the archives in Calican to find them.
I don't know if it's coincidental, but my mother, I used to play Santa for all of my nephews as they were coming up.
Yeah, of course.
And I had a pair of red velvet Timberland wheat boots they're amazing. And I just brought them upstate. They're a size 9. I think Campbell's a 12, isn't he? He's a big.
No. He's 8.5, 9.
Okay, great. You got to come by the house because I have like 3 pairs of it. But on that note, and I know we're running late, I actually this week bought 2 pairs of 90s Doc Martens on eBay and a pair of Solo Bear, which I think is the original factory made Docs back in the day. And man, don't sleep on them, dude. Those things are, some of them. I have 1 pair that I think will need a resole, which is fine, but the other 2 look great.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I won't sleep on them. As a matter of fact, I think they've got some Solo Bears at the Noah closeout store over on
the
North
green
3rd
ones.
Street.
Get the green ones are sick.
So I think I'm gonna go over and try to get some. All right, Jeff.
All right,
well, let me go get my shoes then. But until we speak again, Culture Club, half hour.
Give us the follow. Give us the like. We'll see you again next week. Later.
All right, Jeff. Later, man.